Well, welcome everyone. Thank you again for being here for the 5 topics of the Bhagavad-gita. And I must say that it's been a real honor for me, and I'm very sad that tonight is the last session, so I may have to beg, borrow, or steal in order to make sure that Vrishni invites me back at some point in the future. But
yeah.
I will understand if she doesn't, then that is because all of you have been bored to tears with this presentation, and you're just like, oh God, when will it end? And then I won't get that, don't call us, we'll call you kind of phone call. So, all right, so we're gonna crack on and try to finish because, and this for Patricia, this. We've been covering the 5 principal topics of an amazing book called the Bhagavad-gita. It's a book of ancient wisdom coming from India that explains the science of yoga and meditation, karma, reincarnation. All of these things are covered there. And we're discussing the 5 primary topics, which is the soul, the nature, the world around us and the world within us, action, which is karma, Ishwar, which is God, and Kala is the topic that we're going to be discussing today, and that means time. Specifically in the Bhagavad Gita, it's referred to as eternal time. So the way people manage their lives, time reveals much about people's personalities and the perceptions they have of themselves, relationships they have with fellow human beings, and their connection in general with the cosmos. So we're going to look at this, and we're calling this the priceless commodity, and that will become more clear as we go through. So a quick recap, we're discussing from the Bhagavad-gita, translated by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and the Bhagavad-gita is an amazing book of spiritual knowledge and wisdom that takes place in a very unusual location, which is a battlefield. And on this battlefield, these 2 personalities have a conversation. One is Arjuna and the other is Krishna. And yeah, it's a big topic to set the scene, but this is the basic essence. So in the middle of this battle, before it happens, this dialogue occurs, and this is the conversation. And some of the topics that we touched upon were things such as the search for happiness, how we're all looking for happiness. We're all searching for pleasure. In general, we want to be happy. We looked at a principle of who am I? Am I this body? Or am I the soul that's inside of this body? We discussed about how sometimes in life we can feel very lost and disconnected. We yearn for something more. And in order to find genuine happiness, we have to reconnect with something inside. Happiness comes from within, not from without. And this is the principle or process of bhakti yoga, which is the process that we discuss mostly in the KCSOC. We looked at God does exist and how many of the greatest scientists, believe it or not, actually do believe in and completely are devout personalities, understanding the principle of God. We looked at the idea of trying to find a higher power and reconnecting with that higher power. And again, this principle of reconnecting and how important it is for us to find peace, happiness, and sanity really in our lives. We looked at what goes around comes around, some lessons about karma and reincarnation, and again, how one of the greatest scientists in the world, Sir Isaac Newton, explained that for every action there's an equal and opposing reaction, or we understand it as what comes around goes around, or what goes around comes around. This was a big topic of karma, and that led us on to the principle of reincarnation and the idea of how bodies change, even in this life, what to speak of in the next life. So like that. And then we discussed, again, not only can we change into human bodies, but we also can transmigrate into different animal bodies. And then last week we discussed the topic of Prakriti, which was nature, the world within and the world without. And we looked at the different elements that were present. There were the gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And then we looked at the subtle elements, which was the mind and the intelligence and the false ego or the false impression. We also discussed the 3 gunas. Remember this, the Guna Management. So Sattva Guna, Raja Guna, and Tama Guna, or goodness, passion, and ignorance. And we discussed how these 3 modes or gunas, that they are like the 3 foundational primary colors, and how all of the things in creation have come from these 3 elements like that. So we discussed this idea of guna management, and we had some nice discussion around how important or how useful it can be to identify situations that we're in and which mode or which guna is kind of controlling the situation. So if you're like, find yourself around a messy desk all the time, how does that affect you? And can you make a change by just tidying it up, and do you feel better? So this is guna management. Some of it is done unconsciously, but the more that we can become conscious about it, the more that we can move through the different modes and achieve the principle of transcendence. So transcending means that we go beyond these modes or these gunas, and that means we achieve a spiritual platform which is kind of free from being touched by these different gunas. We ended last week by discussing about setting a goal. Now, some of you may be like, oh God, I can't believe he remembered. He asked us to do this because I didn't do it. And some of you may be like, oh, I'm really glad he's asking and he remembered because I did do it. We won't get into which mode which person is in, which guna is affecting them. Oh my God, Patricia, you've transformed. I thought it was only Vishal who could change his background so expertly, but yours looks so real.
I also thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're coming to take tests, so I had to change.
Oh
location.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was the the goal last week. Just curious, did anyone do it?
Sort of.
Okay.
Sort of.
Everyone's like, well, we thought it was a nice session, Jai, but we thought you were really kidding at the end about us doing anything. Are we really supposed to do something? Well, anyway, this was the idea. Just wondering how you did. But if you didn't do it, it's okay. But the idea was to take one of these areas and see how you could practice the idea of guna management and use a SMART goal in order to try to work on diet, lifestyle, work, your environment, media exposure, like that. So anyone would like to reflect back or share anything from that if they did do anything? If you didn't, it's okay. Ellie, we won't hold it against you because you weren't here, so that's okay. You get away easy. The rest of you should feel very bad, very, very bad. You are naughty. No problem. Okay, so we'll move on to today's topic. And because you didn't do that, then it saves us quite a bit of time. Time. Yes, so we're going to start with an introspection. So if you have your notebook or something to write on, then here is the first reflection. So the question is, as we start our last unit, which is more valuable, time or money? Ding, 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 ding. What do you think? Which is more valuable, time or money?
I think time, because it's limit. It has a limit.
Very nice. Very good. Usually this is just a quiet reflection, but I'm really happy that you spoke. I've been with this group for 6 weeks. Nobody ever speaks anything. They don't do the homework. They don't share anything. It's incredible. Anyway,
The
that's
worst
very
group
good.
ever.
Nice answer. And here's another question. This is also, again, personal. You can just write it down in your journal. Do you feel that you ever waste time? And if you do feel like you waste time, what do you waste time on? And you can't say coming to the KCSOC sessions with Jai. That is not allowed. So do you feel like you waste time? And if so, on what? Just write it down. And if you don't feel like you waste time, that's great. Then what's your secret? And write that down.
Oh, please tell us. Don't write that down.
I don't know. You don't do the homework. I feel like I'm wasting my time. You know? I'm just kidding. Okay. So yeah, just write that down. Okay, so here is most people's experience of time. I'm late for a very important date. Everyone knows the little white rabbit down the rabbit hole, Alice in Wonderland, chasing after, and he's always feeling late. So how many of you feel like this most of the time? Oh no, I'm not gonna make it, I'm late. Everyone's feeling this pressure to be somewhere. So time is a commodity that it seems we often have very little of. And we're often always chasing after time, trying to get time. And when you're young, like all of you, it seems like you have forever. But when you get old like me, you just wish you had some more time. And you hang on, hoping, wishing, oh, I'd done so many things. So this is the experience of time. And actually, time is an illusion. Yes? I mean, where is time? Can you see time? How do you know time's passing? What is time? Can you capture it and hold on to it? It seems to fly when you're having fun, and it seems to stand still during trauma or when things are difficult, and it seems like this moment is never going to end. They say that time heals all wounds, and some things only the passage of time can resolve. But where is time? How do we know time? How do we judge time? Well, we know that time is valuable. And here's some quotes. Even one moment of life spent cannot be regained for millions of gold coins. Therefore, what greater loss is there than time spent uselessly? So this is from a great Indian philosopher named Chanakya Pandit. The most important thing in the world, time. And that's from Thomas Edison. Dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that is the stuff life is made of. Benjamin Franklin. So these are some quotes. They may have value to you, may make us think a little bit about time in a different way. So if you want to realize the value of 1 year, ask a student who failed his or her exams. Anyone there ever failed their exams and not made it out? If you want to realize the value of 1 month, ask a mother who gave birth to a premature baby. To realize the value of 1 week, ask an editor of a weekly magazine. To realize the value of 1 day, ask a daily wage laborer who has 6 kids to feed. To realize the value of 1 hour, ask the lovers who are waiting to meet. To realize the value of 1 minute, ask a person who missed their train. To realize the value of 1 second, ask a person who survived an accident. And to realize the value of 1 millisecond, ask the person who won a silver medal in the Olympics. Powerful, huh? Isn't it? Nice to think like this. Wow, time is so powerful. Look at these things. So time, what is our investment in time? Here is the general average of a person who lives, for 70 years. This is the return on their life. For Marcello, this first one may be a little different. People sleep for 24 years. She's in bed all day, so it may be like more like 50 years for her.
No, I was working.
People work for so she works in bed for 14 years of her life.
Not in bed.
So, I mean, all this time she's in bed working and sleeping. I mean, that's easily 38 years. Watching TV for 8 years of your life.
That I do, yeah.
Eating for 6 years of your life. That's an average person. That's not Vrishni. Vrishni can eat from out of house and home.
Yeah.
Traveling for 4 years. Doing odd jobs or chores for 4 years. Just taking care of your hygiene of your body. That's an average person, not the billionaire's Patricia. She looks like she must spend like hours every day doing herself up. And being sick, we spend 3 years just being sick. Of course, during a pandemic, that might be different. But this is the investment of the return on our time. So our lives can be wasted in just doing the run-of-the-mill tasks. And we often waste time in doing these standard tasks. And that time could be used to really start living a life according to what we want to do. And this relates to this idea of Guna Management that we discussed last week, because we allow the modes or the gunas to pull us in certain ways to do things that if we were understanding how we were being pulled and pushed around, we could start to control those things and pull and push ourselves in a specific direction to really achieve what we want. And this is a principle that many people speak about with time management, and you probably all are aware of the time management matrix, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and 4. So you have the not urgent and not important things, and that's where a lot of us spend our time, unfortunately. And then you have things that are not important, but they're urgent, like telephone calls and pressing matters and popular activities. Quadrant 2 is where we should be spending most of our time. Planning, self-development, prevention. This is much more in the mode of goodness or sattva guna. And a quadrant 1 is important and urgent. And that is where a lot of people spend time. This crisis things or deadline-driven projects, pressing problems, meetings, urgent time-bound things. So most people are so busy in quadrant 1, they never really spend much time here. And this is goodness. This is passion, and this down here is ignorance. So, and this kind of falls somewhere in between passion and ignorance, like that. So a lot of times people talk about time management from a perspective of accomplishing more things in a shorter period of time, which is quantity. But in terms of efficiency, this approach is valid. However, time management means focusing on quality rather than quantity. So for those in positions of leadership, and you're all probably going to be amazing leaders in the future, it is not efficient to waste time in foolish and counterproductive ways. So it means we have to also look for quality over quantity in our time management. So a question we asked at the beginning, we've already had one answer. So which is more valuable, time or money? So what do you think?
It's time.
Time.
But
And
they say
why?
time is money.
Say it again.
And they say time is money.
Yes, they do. They
But
say
time
time
is
is money.
definitely more valuable. Yeah.
So why is time more valuable than money then?
Oh, you can't recover time.
Exactly. I think that's what you said earlier, isn't it, Patricia? So yeah, you can't get time back. Money you can spend and you can lose, but then you can work and you can get, if you spend £1, you can earn £1 back. Like that, money you can almost always get back. Many of the most successful people, billionaires, millionaires, or well-to-do people, they'll tell you they were bankrupt several times. and then they got their money back. So, but time, how you spend that time, once you spend it, that's it, it's gone. You're not going to get it back. So, although we think in one sense that it's so rare, but actually, if we think about it, all we really have is time. All of our actions are based in time. Our decisions are projected and move through time. Everything, there's only time from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. While you're sleeping, time is always there. And the question is, how are we utilizing that time? So this is the next reflection and next question. How do you spend this commodity? You've got 24 times 7 times 365 times 70. Do the maths. I'm not gonna. And let me know, how are you spending this valuable commodity? If time's more important than money, do we think like that? Are we conscious of that when we're living our daily lives? I just heard from someone the other day, they had an experience that put them on the edge. They almost died. And they said that now every day they wake up thinking, this day could be my last. I really need to think about what's important in life. So everyone's thinking about how will I spend my time today? It's like a credit card, unlimited credit card. You don't even know what the max is on your time. You could have 100-pound credit card limit, or you could have a 1 billion-pound credit card limit. Your time credit card is there every day you're spending. And how are you spending? So let's look at the Vedic perspective of time. Because in the Bhagavad-gita, by the way, this is a topic from the Bhagavad-gita. In the Bhagavad-gita, time is explained quite differently than the way that we think about it. Even the Bhagavad-gita, and it seems some of it may even seem quite mystical or far-fetched. One of the first things that is explained is that time is seen from the perspective of the creation of the universe and eternity, which is a long time. Eternity is it's a lot of time. And they don't just talk about matters of seconds. In the Vedas, it describes the most minute amount of time, which is known as a parama anu, which is the smallest fraction of time measurable. And it's measured by the amount of time that it takes for an atom to move. And that's described in the Vedas long before all of these ideas of super microscopes and all of these things were created, all the way up to from the dawn of creation to eternity. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's discussion of a personality who is known as Lord Brahma. And in that idea, it's described that how long we live greatly depends on what kind of body we have. So for example, an insect might stay around for about a month, while a human being sometimes lives for, let's say, up to 100 years. So the time is relative for that individual. So an ant's life, like if an ant lives for 1 month, what is that ant experiencing? It's also being born and it's going to die. So it's going through the same transition, but time is affecting him differently. I remember when I first heard about dog years. You know this, that like a dog, if you say, how long have you had your dog? And someone says, oh, for 5 years. And they say, oh, that's 35 dog years. And I remember thinking, what the heck is a dog year? I think for horses, it's 5 years or something. But for different animals, there's a kind of mathematical equation, I don't know how they arrived at it, that shows that how the passage of time for that animal and its equivalent for a human. So that's why dogs, they just don't live as long as humans. Their bodily makeup, their bodily composition, and the way that they live life means that they just don't live life as long, but they still live life. It's just shorter. So Lord Brahma, in the Bhagavad-gita, it's described that actually there are personalities who inhabit higher planetary systems, and their bodily composition is much more advanced than ours, because their bodily composition is primarily composed of goodness and intelligence, which means, and now understand this, when we discuss Guna Management, if I get a new phone, yes? So I have a new, by the way, this isn't new, you can tell it's a very old one. So if I get a new phone and I keep it like this and I drop it, what's going to happen?
Crack it. Yeah.
It's going to get damaged. If I don't take care of this, if I live life in the mode of ignorance, it means I drop it, I put it in stuff, I eat with it, I put it here. I just mess it up. And eventually what happens is things in the mode of ignorance, or the guna of tamas, they degrade very quickly. Passion also burns up very quickly because you use it a lot. But it doesn't go as quick as ignorance, because ignorance means I might leave it on the train. I might drop it down the drain. I might flush it down the toilet because I'm so ignorant that I don't care. Passion means you probably hold on a little bit more to it. Goodness means you take care of it. You maybe you put it in a case, right? You put it in a case that keeps it safe, and you protect it, and you keep an eye on it, and you check the battery, and you maintain it. That's goodness. And goodness means that things last longer. So if you are living a life that is wholesome and good, then likely your life will be more healthy and also longer lasting. It's not an absolute, but it's a general principle, which is why doctors always encourage us to lead healthier lives. Healthy life means longer life. So it's described in the Gita about these types of personalities. And there's a whole thing that explains the principle of time and how it rotates through different ages. One age is called Satya, one age is called Treta, Dwarpa, and Kali. And this is where we are now. We're in this age, which is called Kali, because these ages, they just cycle around. So when we talk about the principle of reincarnation, time is also the cycle of birth and death, and how these cycles rotate through time, and different things are occurring over and over and over again. If you watch the film The Matrix, there's, I think the last, I think there were 3 of them. The last one, the main character, Keanu Reeves, I can't remember his name in the movie, but he meets the creator of The Matrix. If you've ever seen that, it's a very interesting conversation that they have, talking about creation and time and how things repeat themselves and how many times it's gone on. But see, we're kind of inside of it all. So we just think this is the only time, and it's just me, and it's very small, and it's just like this, but it's the most important thing. But the Vedas open it up to be this huge understanding of the progression of time and what time looks like. So this is more explanation of a life of Lord Brahma, because Lord Brahma, he lives for, 3,040,000,000,000 human years. Yeah. Now, some people might be like, great, but the thing is, it's also explained in Bhagavad-gita that for someone, even Lord Brahma, who lives that long, even he still eventually has to die. So just like an ant may be thinking that you as a human being, wow, oh my God, you live 100 years. I only live for 1 month. You live for 100 years, you know? So the ant's freaking out thinking that you're like this amazing, but then you're thinking 100 years, I wish I had 500 years. And then you have someone like Lord Brahma, and probably the mathematical ratio would be very similar to 100 years and versus 1 month or 1 week, or some insects live, I think, 1 day. They come into being at the beginning of the day and then they die by the end. But they have a whole life experience. So anyway, time has a lot more dimension to it. And the life of Lord Brahma, it's described in the Bhagavad-gita, is simply one breath, one inhalation of Mahavishnu. So this is a form of Krishna. And Mahavishnu, just one breath is equivalent to 3,040,000,000,000 years. Just one breath. That's an inhale. An exhale is another 3 breaths. I mean, that's a long breath. You know, when we were doing one week, we did these breathing exercises. So just do that for 3 trillion years, will you? No problem. You know, you can't even do it for 1 minute to speak of. So that's, again, just if we can get our heads around the concept of time that's presented in the Vedas and the Vedic texts in the Bhagavad-gita. So this idea of kala, which is time, it's an endless cycle of birth and death, and it's going on and on and on, repeating itself. It's also known as samsara, the cycle of birth and death. And we as little jivas have kind of landed somewhere in the middle. Whoa! And we think, oh, wow, it's all, this is all new. It's all, Meanwhile, if we could come back, if anyone has ever done that, if you've ever gone up high on a building and looked down into the crowd and seen all the people down, like if you're in the Eiffel Tower or something like that, and you're looking, you're like, wow, look at all those people. But when you're down on the ground, what are you thinking? Oh yeah, there's only about a few people around here. You don't really have an elevated view of reality, let's say. You don't really know what's going on, but the higher you get, the more of a view an overview you have, and the more you see things in a different perspective. So this is what the Bhagavad-gita is trying to help us to understand from this perspective of eternity and eternality and the cycles of birth and death. So Kala is a powerful force which destroys and disintegrates everything. Everything that enters into time has a beginning and ultimately has an end, and it just keeps cycling like this. Everything in this material world eventually comes to an end. And in the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says that he devours everything of this world as Kala. And there's a famous quote from the Bhagavad-gita that was recited by Robert Oppenheimer at the first testing of this the atom bomb. He actually quoted this from the Bhagavad-gita, where Krishna says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Actually, but this is the verse from Bhagavad-gita, "Kalo smi lokaksha krit pravrido." Time I am the great destroyer of worlds. So this is the quote that was given, and I think this was 1945. Obviously, another scientist who was reading the Bhagavad-gita. So that's it. Time is diminishing everything. So maybe one day, or maybe you already have like a nice, beautiful home. Lots of people dream about this. Of course, you know, one day I'll have a home of my own. So beautiful, you know, and it's like one day I'll have, you know, a little baby, and, you know, it'll be so nice. But eventually the house gets old, and eventually the baby also gets old. And that's what happens. This is how we see time. Earlier we said, where is time? This is it. It's painted on the faces of people. It's in the fabric of the material world around us, the fabric of Prakriti, of nature. And that's how we see time, but it's very subtle, and it passes and you don't even notice. And then one day you realize my whole life has passed. So Bhagavad-gita also speaks about this principle of having multiple lives, which we discussed in the section on reincarnation. And also, there's a very important point about how much we should value this human life. The fact that we have a human body and we can contemplate. If you remember, we opened this whole section with a principle that was spoken by many of the great yogis and sages from India, where they say that life should begin with the question, or our real life begins with the question, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. What is the goal of life? Why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? So we as human beings have the possibility to think like that. And if we don't explore that, if we don't go deeper in trying to understand that, then we miss the value of life. So life is really about this search, this quest for understanding and spiritual development, understanding who we really are, understanding what our relationship is to the world around us, how my actions impact and influence my expenditure of time, how I get caught up and bound by certain activities that are not conducive to achieving what my real aims and goals are. And ultimately, what is my relationship with the divine or the supreme? Where is all of this taking me? I have this human life. I can contemplate these things. Let me make decisions that will help me to utilize this time to make the greatest progress. And we'll end with a quote. Again, this is not from the Gita, but this is from the kind of book after the Gita, which is called the Bhagavatam. And this quote says that both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life for everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing spiritual topics. So, and according to the Bhagavad-gita, perfection is on the spiritual platform. And this platform is obtained through an absorption of consciousness. So how is it that by the rising and setting of the sun, everyone else's life is being decreased, except someone who's speaking about spiritual topics? What do you think? Anyone would like to venture a guess? Why is that? Does that make any sense? Doesn't really make much sense, does it? Patricia?
But I wonder, is it only by discussing these topics? Or maybe by action as well?
Yeah, by action.
Huh?
Mm-hmm. And why? Why would it be both or either?
Maybe you can discuss like with yourself. So it's about not only talking and saying out loud, but also like learning to live this way, like implementing it in everyday life.
Okay, very nice. Yes. Yes, so not just discussing with ourselves and maybe even with others, but implementing it into our lives. Yes, very valuable. But why would you think that just discussing or hearing or conversing about these types of topics and working to implement them means that our life is not kind of being decreased? Any thoughts?
Because we're adding value to our time.
Okay, that's great. How? How do you think?
With the discussions, I guess, how to implement, like Patrice just said. I don't know.
No, you were going. That was good. I was there with you. Keep going. Keep going. Okay.
Yeah.
So the idea is that if we understand that the body that we have is a temporary machine made of the material energy, yes, and it is confined by time. It means like that picture of the baby and the picture of the old man, then life is occurring with the body is just a passage of time. But if we understand that we are not just this external body, that who we really are is that spiritual spark that's inside that is giving consciousness and life to the body. And if we understand that that spiritual spark is transmigrating from one life to another, then that means that that spark actually is eternal. That's the idea that the soul is eternal. So if we deal with topic matters that are on this material bodily platform, then we absorb ourselves in the temporary, and temporary is confined by time, which means it reduces and diminishes. But if we absorb our consciousness in topics of the soul, topics of the spirit, then we're dwelling on the eternal, and our consciousness is absorbed in the eternal, and we start to become more aligned with that eternality. And when we're connected with the eternal, it's not, the passage of time is not the same. It's not diminishing or decreasing. We're not actually worried about things coming to an end because we're already absorbed in the endlessness. Fernanda, I think I just blew your mind. You went,
Yeah.
she's like, whoa, this dude is deep, man. Yeah, okay, maybe I went too far. I hope I didn't freak you out too much.
Please carry on.
Yeah. But did that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, but so where did the animals enter that? Because you mentioned that the reincarnation, we also come more as animals. Was that at the beginning of the consciousness or our soul when we were evolving, or because they cannot discuss anything? So what
That's
happened?
right.
How do we come back as humans, or I don't know?
Don't they have a pure soul? Isn't what everybody says?
Yeah, right.
Nice. Yeah, so it's described in the Gita and other Vedic texts that all living entities have a soul. So a tree, a tomato plant, fish, a gerbil, a hamster, a mouse, a rat, a spider, a bird, a horse, an elephant, and humans all have souls. If something comes into being, stays for some time, produces some byproducts, dwindles, and eventually passes, that's a living entity, and a soul is present in that body. Now, the question that you had is, where does it work with animals? So there was 1 week we discussed this idea of Darwin's theory about the progress of living entities, that humans came from monkeys, and originally they came from a little one-celled amoeba. But the Vedas don't teach like that. The Vedas explain that the progress, the theory of evolution, is one of consciousness, not one of changing bodies in that sense, but the soul moves from one bodily consciousness to the next. So I don't know if any of you have a pet. Anyone has a cat?
No cats.
Cat? Okay, great. But you dog?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a dog. Okay. So they say dog is man's best friend, right? And, but yeah, so if you have a pet, then you know the pet is lovable. The pet has, some emotion, doesn't it? It's like, especially dogs seem a little more intelligible in that way. Cats are just like detached. They're just like, yeah. Whatever, who cares? No
Judging you.
Dogs are like, play with me. So if you had, you know, there's a characteristic there. I once knew a lady, she had 16 cats.
Oh my God.
16 cats. And some of them looked very similar. You know, they're like black or calico. But she knew them by name. And when she would call their name, they would come and she would say, no, they're all different. They all have different personalities. They're all little people. She used to call them her little people. I was like, they're cats, lady. But she was like, you know, she loved them. She had affection for them. But, you know, she couldn't really have a deep philosophical conversation with her cat, even the smartest one. And no matter how much she loved the cats, they weren't going to get the food out of the can themselves, you know. they just couldn't type an essay. They weren't going to get a university degree, and they certainly weren't usually contemplating higher topic matter. It's described that most animals are really based on the platform of eating or sleeping or procreating or fighting. That's most animals live on that platform. So their consciousness is just absorbed in that. So humans should be a little bit more evolved, although many humans still also only eat, sleep, procreate, and fight. But actually we have the capacity to think and to make decisions about what we eat. The cat is not usually making such a big decision about what it eats. It eats what it's given, if it's a domesticated cat, or if it's a cat out in the wild, then it eats mice or rats or moles or whatever it eats. So the point is that the consciousness is debilitated by the externals, by the body. In the same way, we may also get a body from birth or through accident or something that may become debilitated, and that also debilitates our ability to interact with the world around us. But as human beings, because we have access to more full use of intelligence, our consciousness can still help to carry us to a different place. So with this cycle of reincarnation, our consciousness slowly, just like you slowly learn lessons, like you're all at university now, but you started somewhere with, you know, nursery school, or what we call in America kindergarten, and then first grade, second grade, or first year, second year, and you make progress. And probably if you think back to it, you probably can't remember much that you learned in the first 5 years of school. But those were the foundational years where you learned most of what you're building on now. So the cycle of reincarnation means we pass through different bodies. The soul passes through different bodies and it learns different lessons. And it makes slowly gradual progress. If we come to the platform of the human body and we misuse the intelligence that we have and the independence that we have, and we sort of act more like an animal than a human being. Sometimes in the Bhagavad-gita it uses the term dupadapasa, which means two-legged animals, which means humans are sometimes just animals with two legs. But if we act like that, then our consciousness may dictate that we wind up taking birth as an animal. There's actually I don't know the place to look for it now, but I remember reading once, there's an actual science of the study of how people who sometimes have pets, they become so attached to their pet that over time, they begin to take on features and start to look like their pet. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but sometimes you might see an older gentleman walking a dog and you look and you think, which one's the dog, man? I mean, look at that. Because people's consciousness starts to become absorbed and the animal, and their attachment becomes so strong to it that their consciousness sort of dictates that in the next life, they wind up in that kind of body. So that's the principle of reincarnation. Does that make sense, or did I make that really confusing? Marcello, that was your question, right?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. It's very interesting. for me. Yeah.
So you have to be careful what you're
I
thinking
know,
about.
that's what I'm thinking.
Well, good. That's the whole
My
point.
dog.
We're supposed to start thinking.
I'm worried now. I don't want to come back as a dog.
Yeah, well, don't come back as a dog. That's the point also. So if you absorb yourself, like from this verse, if you absorb yourself in thinking just about the material temporary things, that will affect our consciousness and force us into another body in the next life. But if our consciousness is promoted to the higher topics that are based on the science and the knowledge and wisdom and understanding of the soul, then at the time of death, we enter into the spiritual platform and we become what's known as liberated or emancipated, or we break free from the cycle of birth and death. This is transcendence. We go beyond this and we experience the spiritual platform. And there are many yogis, sages or sadhus, or Lord Buddha is a really perfect example of someone who achieved enlightenment in their life, in this lifetime, and therefore even while they were walking around in this body, but they were not really connected to the material world in the same way. Even Lord Jesus, he made this statement that we have to come to the point where we can be in the world, but understand we are not of this world. So that's the principle of transcendence, where we understand who we really are. Not that we live in the dream or the drama or the facade that who I am is this body, because this body is simply temporary. But who I am is the jiva, the atma, or the eternal soul, and I have an eternal relationship with the supreme, with the divine. And by the cultivation of that, we develop, or we move to the platform of transcendence. So like that. Sorry, if you get me started, I'll talk all night long and just keep going
No, I
on.
love this topic. It's really interesting. Thank you for explaining.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions?
Then what happens to people that are just bad people that are not trying to improve their spiritual side or to achieve this level of knowledge?
Well, I mean, basically it's described that just try to remember that things are based on consciousness. So if we get into the terms of right and wrong, good or bad, that can become a little overtly religious sometimes when you're dealing with the science. So let's not discuss what's right or wrong, good or bad, good people, bad people. Let's just look at the idea that people make decisions because they have the ability to decide. So Prakriti, material nature, we have a bit of free will. So if I make a decision, every action has an equal and opposing reaction. So depending on the decisions I make in my life now, today, it will affect my entire life, because every decision that you make has an impact beyond the shadow of a doubt. Whether it may be the tiniest thing, or it may be a huge decision. So if we make certain decisions, there will be certain reactions. It's just the way that the world works. I did have a friend, a little bit of a, well, I mean, I still have the friend, he still is around, but actually I had two friends. So when I was growing up, and I used to play in bands. So we were always playing gigs and lots of things that I don't want to discuss so much now, but anyway, one of them decided that it would be a really cool thing to steal a guitar from the local guitar shop. So, you know, we used to have really long hair. Believe it or not, you wouldn't believe it, but I used to have hair longer than yours, Fernanda. And my friend, he had really long hair and he used to wear this big trench coat. So he just went into the shop, stuck the guitar under his jacket and walked out. He never got caught. It was like $1,200 guitar or something. He never got caught. So one of the other guys we used to hang out, he thought, oh, That's cool. I'm going to do the same thing. And he went into the shop. He stole the guitar. The alarm went off. The cops came. He ran from the cops. He wound up running through a stop, getting away, ran through a stoplight. Another cop wound up chasing. And it just turned into this whole karmic thing, which in the end, the police went to his father, to his house, and they had his father at gunpoint and then, holding him. And eventually he got caught and he went to jail. It's not a good story, but it is a true story. Now, the other person, eventually, he seemed like he got away with it. But basically, the point is, let's not judge who's good or bad or right or wrong. Let's just say they performed an activity and there was a consequence to it. Yes? But then every day we see that people, they may use their guitars. They may work to buy a guitar and they eventually pay off the guitar. Then they get good credit and they can buy a better guitar. And then after a couple of years, they've got 3 or 4 guitars and they don't have to go to jail for it. I mean, it's not right or wrong, good or bad. That's just the way that the world works. It's the way the programming works. So what happens to people who don't cultivate spiritual knowledge or spiritual wisdom means that they just stay caught up in this cycle. That's what happens. The only way out of the cycle is through higher consciousness and higher understanding. And with higher intelligence and knowledge and understanding, our actions start to change. Right? So we don't perform the same actions, so we don't become controlled by the same gunas, and we don't get the same results or reactions from our activities because we're doing something different, if that makes sense. So it's sort of like a fan, because we'll perform so many actions and in life, then a fan gets going very quick. But when we start to perform spiritual activity, as Patricio was saying, we don't just want to talk about it, but we want to put it into practice. And when we do that, the fan starts to slow. So the fan is like karmic reactions and it just keeps feeding itself. But once you stop performing the actions, the fan starts to slow. And then eventually there's no more reactions because all of your activities are akarmic. If you remember, there were 3 types of karma. They're akarmic, which means they're not creating a good or bad result, good or bad, quote unquote. So you're not getting that result anymore. So then what happens is you become free. You actually feel genuine freedom and liberation, even while you're still in the body, because you're not being pulled by these different modes and gunas, and your actions aren't dictating such negative, often reactions or unwanted reactions. So the idea is that spiritual life liberates us and brings us to the point of genuine happiness, because it's not happiness derived from something temporary. It's happiness derived from something that's eternal. And when we touch and taste that which is eternal, we feel what's known as ananda. And this means real bliss, joy, the real genuine joy of the heart that can't be matched by anything. And that's just the highest high. You don't want those lower highs anymore, the highs I used to really go for, you don't go for that anymore because you've achieved something that is far beyond that. And you think, no, I don't want anything to damage this. It's so precious. I'm kind of going on again. You got to stop me, Vrishni, when I start.
No, that's okay.
Say, God, got it, man. Any other thoughts? Any reflections? Wow, the crowd is silent. So, last reflection. Everyone ready?
Yeah.
Fernando's like, God, there's more. I thought we were done. This guy, he said he got to stop at 7:30. He doesn't shut up. So, last reflection. How can I spend my valuable time more wisely? How can I really genuinely? How do I think? Hearing all of this stuff after, I mean, you just spent 6 1.5 hour sessions, 2 hour sessions, some of the times, like with me, with Vrishni. I mean, I hope it wasn't a waste of time. So how can I spend my valuable time more wisely? What kind of goal could I set to try to genuinely invest my time more wisely, to think each day about the value of every moment of my time and each decision that I make? What kind of goal can I set? Anyway, I'm trying to create some call to action for you, but you know, this is life. So
That's the big question, isn't it? Because I basically live my life on what's in my calendar. So
perfect. That's
I'm
amazing.
planning everything, and oh, it's okay. I planned the whole thing. I said, this is gonna be a good day, you know?
Yeah.
And then it feels like, yeah, there's still not enough time to do, even though I've planned everything. And it ended up in what you were saying about quantity, but not quality.
Yes.
No, yeah, I am spending some days 12 hours on my assignment. But should I actually be doing this? You know, should I be investing part of those 12 hours in something else? And it's so hard to achieve this balance and to actually understand what is value added and what is not. I mean, I know the social media that I spend time on, it's definitely not adding any value to it. It's just a waste of time. But when I'm waking up, you know, at 6 a.m. and focusing everything on my day, on what I planned, and still doesn't feel like I had enough time. It's so frustrating. Sorry.
That was a confirmation from the divine. It was like a message from beyond saying, go, Fernanda, go. Do it, girl. That is it. Yeah, totally. I get it. I'm there with you. I understand. I also have similar type of feeling. In a way, it's kind of a little different, but you know, the thing is, first thing to remember is, Fernanda, you are putting the things in your diary, right?
Yeah.
Nobody else is doing that, are they? Is Marcella putting stuff in your diary?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she's good at it.
I cannot live without my calendar with so much to do. But what if you have nothing to do? I'm on holiday and I just wanted to watch TV. Is it bad? I mean, I have nothing else to do.
Yeah, well, you know, this is the thing. Remember the Guna Management section. Here's what we do. 12 hours. For like 15 or 20 days. 12 hours, 12. And then break. Yay, Christmas break. What are you going to do? Nothing. I'm gonna lay in my bed all day and drink this and watch TV and read social media. Okay, no problem. Again, it's not about right or wrong. It's not about good or bad. Who's a good person? Who's a bad person? But what are the consequences of things? Sometimes I'm not saying I'm not saying it's bad. We need a break. But what if life could exist in a balanced way that maybe I don't need to have like 5 days of sleeping for 14 hours and like, you know, not having a bath and eating old pizza and just like slobbing out. Maybe I don't need to have that. Not saying it's a bad thing, but maybe I could live in a balanced way that in that day where I spend 12 hours going for it, I understand that if I don't add something in the sattva, in the goodness area, I'm only going to go into the tamas, into the ignorance area. So, because I can't just function in passion without there being a resultant reaction. And passion always diminishes to ignorance unless we're really focused on elevating ourselves out of ignorance into goodness. But beyond these modes is transcendence. And that is achieved through spiritual activity. So just adding something in to our schedule that allows us to reflect, as we see here, If we read a little bit each day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the Bhagavad-gita, and try to contemplate something higher, we will feel great benefit. If you do some, we do meditation, if you do some mantra meditation each day, or like Rishni sings so beautifully at the end of the session, if you just put on if you're in the middle of a 12-hour stint, just say, okay, I'm going to break this 12 hours up. Every 3 hours, I'm going to have a 5 or 10 minute break where I just put on some kirtan and listen to some chanting, take some deep breaths and get back. Or maybe you even get up and start dancing around the room, just having fun, but you just let yourself go, but in a spiritual way. So you're not taking kind of shelter of that which is temporary. You're focusing your consciousness on something higher. And then you're going to feel a rejuvenation from that. That's just, it's beyond anything else you've experienced. But you have to plan that in. It's not going to fall on top of you out of the sky. Like, oh, spiritual life just fell upon me. I'm so happy now. It's like anything else. We have to it can be more difficult to get it in there because the modes are pushing us around. The calendar is dictating, the courses are determining, the family is, and we feel like I have no control, I have no time, it's like this, it's like that. But actually, we have to interject just some of this transcendental wisdom, this knowledge, to try to help ourselves to become a little more elevated. Many of the people who are the most successful, they understand the principle of Guna Management, and they also, many people are, the most successful people are spiritually minded also. They make time for their relationship with the divine. They make time to reconnect, and they make time to reflect, to meditate, to have some space that's sacred, to create a sacred space where I'm just okay. And then, like I said, the main process that we teach or discuss is this chanting, which Vrishni is going to do now, because I think she's thinking, he told me 7:30, now he's already past 8 o'clock. So with that, I think that I will just say thank you very much. It's been a great honor and a privilege to be with all of you over these last few weeks. I can't think of any way better to spend my time. Friday night, I could have been out. I live in London. I could have been partying like anything, even during the lockdown. But I thought, no, there are these wonderful, beautiful people from Kingston College. Kingston
University.
Kingston University. And they're so eager to join me in talking about spiritual topics. So anyway, I thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's been a wonderful 6-7 weeks with you. I think 7. Yeah.
7
But
weeks.
it's been very wonderful, and I think we can all agree that
Yes.
we've been doing this, and we would really love to have you back with us one day, maybe.
I
in
would
the
be
future.
honored. So you have to invite me.
Yeah. Okay, we'll
And then I need to fit it into my
yeah.
I know what we manage something.
I know what we can do.
Vishal.
I know what we can do when you're not here. We can just, pretend that you're sat with me. It'll be a group session, get the vibe going as well.
Okay, Vishal. You're the master mystic. You can make anything manifest that you want.
So it's like you're in the room with us.
Yeah. I look like I'm a couple of years younger there and a few pounds lighter also. That must have been before lockdown.
Yeah. But Thank you so much. And just because it's the end of the term as well, we want to take a group picture
Oh yeah.
as usual. And it's the end of the year as well that we're going to be seeing each other probably. But thank you very much.
When
Thank
do
you
you
so much.
start back up again?
So these sessions or uni?
I guess uni. When do you all come back together?
Uni, we come back on the 4th of January. For most of us, I think. Yeah, 4th of Jan.
Okay.
Um,
And when will
but
these sessions start? More or less around the same time?
around the same time, probably that same week on Friday,
Mhm.
as usual. But yeah, we would love to have you with us again.
I was going to do the picture.
Vishal,
Oh yeah, yeah.
you're so technical, but I see you holding a phone. Please
No,
allow
I'm going
me
to take 2 pictures. I'm going to take one on the computer and then one with my phone.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Right. I've got
So
this.
I wasn't
Right.
really part of the group. So do you want one without me?
Oh, Patricia, you
No.
have to
No, no, it's all right. It's all right.
You came on the last day,
Okay.
but you made the biggest contributions. Nobody else
Yeah.
even talked until you.
Wow, I feel special. Right. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I would definitely join if you come back. For
Yeah.
more sessions. Yeah.
We'd love to have you with us. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Are we ready for this picture now?
Varsha, you've got a black box here. Get in your own box, Varsha, please.
Tony, Varsha, wait,
Back
wait.
in the
Hello.
box. Get back.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Okay,
All
Vishal,
right.
have you done
Right.
it?
I'm going to take 2 pictures. So, okay. Right. Let me look
Okay.
at the camera as well.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
All righty.